Welcome to this talk, to this panel. We're going to, like, the title was much invented to draw attention to it, but I see that worked like maybe half the way. Anyways, I'm very happy that everybody's here, that is here, and I'm going to introduce you to all the beautiful people that are here on stage. And are joining me for this panel discussion. First, there's Roy. He's going to give a talk in about 45 minutes, probably. And Antoine, giving a talk tomorrow, right? Joe already gave his talk, and Silvia is going to give his talk, her talk tomorrow. And yeah, maybe let's start with you, Joe, because some people may already have watched your talk back in Cinema 6. Maybe you can start, introduce yourself, and then I have one or two questions for you.
Okay. Hi. So yeah, I'm Joe Allison, the head of product design at Minoux. I've been at Minoux for around 3 years now, since we're quite small, just in a tiny little room in East London. So since then, we've kind of built the company out to around 160 employees with nearly 600,000 users now across the whole of Europe. So yeah, I mean, my role is really nowadays kind of leading the design team and seeing where that goes in the future, really, with all the features we have to make. So yep.
What was your talk about? In one sentence.
Wow. Okay. It was really just about Minoux design and how we've developed the product since day one, essentially. So, I mean, I called it Minoux Design Evolution, but it was just around how we design stuff and how it's changed over time.
Okay. And there's one question I was wondering. With the redesign process, like, how do you stay consistent over the year, or over it was a process of 1.5 years now?
So, I mean, 3 years really, but the rebrand itself took like 6 months, and then after that, it was another 6 months kind of rolling it out, and then 2 years of work, yeah.
But what would you say, like, what's the tool, or what's the trick to stay consistent over time, like within this process, or you just set up and then walk with you what you just made in this 6 weeks or 6 months?
I'd say there's like a few ways that we've done it, really. One of them is just working really closely as a team. I know it sounds pretty basic, but I mean, we've got a really small team at Minoux, so I can't really say how it's done in massive teams, although, I mean, I've got massive respect for the companies that manage to do that. But it's really just working really closely together, having lots of little conversations about every single element, really. We've also had like pretty much zero staff turnover the last 3 years, so like our kind of professional relationships have sort of grown over time, and to a point where we're very much synced up, so it almost feels like it's sort of, well, we hope it feels like it's coming from the same hand, essentially. So, yeah, I mean, just staying as a really small team. We've also, each design has been part of working on the brand guidelines and the design system, so I feel as though that they're quite engaged with the brand, and because they've actually been part of actually coming up with the rules themselves, really. I mean, I guess there's a few ways that we've done it like that. Yeah.
Cool. There's another thing I was wondering, if, like, when you saw the first iteration and the first iteration of Moniz, was it like what you maybe scratched on the surface there, how it changed how the redesign changed the brand, but did it also like changed the product itself, or was it just the same product? Or, like, in other words, could a redesign save a product that is otherwise not well doing?
So I think that in our case, a lot of it was just like a visual change of it. We did change the product in some ways, like with some of the interactions that we put in there, like changing the payment interaction. I mean, I think that It depends on if your company is solving like a real pain point for users, then it depends how strong that pain point is. If that pain point is really strong, then the design is kind of a little bit less important, I guess, because customers will push themselves through hell to sort of solve their problem. But if that'll only last so long until you get loads of competitors in the space, and then it's kind of like design is one of the only things that will really differentiate you. So yeah, I mean, what else can I say about this? Sorry, carry on.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to introduce the next person in this round, and it is Antoine, left to me, right for you. Can you introduce yourself and maybe explain in a few words what you're going to talk about?
So first, thank you for having me. Small thing. There is a typo in my name. It's actually Antoine, not Antoine. And this is not what I want to point. I just have to say that I'm not actually a full-time employee at Yelp. I'm just a contractor. So this is for the legal disclaimer kind of thing. I would be pretty beat up. So part of the time here in Hamburg, I'm actually living here in Hamburg. Part of the time, 50% of the time, I'm designing stuff at Yelp. Yelp have this subdivision in Hamburg that is actually working on the business side of things, and I'm actually helping to redefine what the business user experience is. And the other part of my time I spend trying to launch my own products, my own side projects, which are very bootstrap, very kind of indie hacker way of building this thing. I'm doing this with my brother-in-law that is actually sitting right here. He flew from France this morning. Yeah, and the last thing is I also have this smaller side project thing that is called Shapes in Hamburg. I'm building a community. It's like a series of design events for product designers in English, because I speak a terrible German. So I had to build something for myself, events that I could actually attend. And yeah, we are trying to get the best speakers from all over northern Germany, also abroad sometimes. Getting a lot of people from Berlin, maybe hopefully in the future. Yeah, that's basically what I do.
Okay. And your talk, what is it going to be about?
So my talk is tomorrow morning in this room at 10 a.m. It's gonna be it's entitled "Designing for Early Stage Startups." So the gist of it is actually just how can you make sure you actually launch products? Because I think in the past I tried to launch something like 25 or 30 products, and about 20 of them were killed in their infancy and were never launched, so they had virtually no chance to succeed. And so we came up with my brother-in-law, which is also the developer that I'm working with here, with some kind of process to just cut everything that is unnecessary and go faster to development. So it includes things like designing directly in the browser, cutting like unnecessary millions of screen kind of static screens, like the typical waterfall flow. Even if most companies call it agile, it's still some kind of waterfall flow. It's also something you might see at most of the company here in Hamburg. So my talk is really about kind of bootstrapping design and how you can be real agile, not just this buzzword agile.
Okay. And what do you think? How designers should, like when you're working in such a small team, like it is apparent that designers have to take up more of the work of others, right? So how should designers understand better business, probably, like, because this is nothing that they usually do, right? What would you say?
Yeah, so this works especially well with this kind of bootstrapped approach to design that I just said when I work on my own projects. But I also think it works for bigger scale things like Yelp. Like if I wouldn't understand the business side of Yelp, I would be a terrible product designer when I'm working on the biz product. But yeah, I think it's incredibly important now for 2018, 2019, in the future. I don't think it's going to change. Product designers to understand the business side of things, because you will not make the right decisions otherwise. You could be a great UI designer, but you will be a terrible product designer. I think that's what the new term of product design is really about, and that's why I try to use less and less UI UX, because it's more of an executive kind of thing. Like you just touch pixels here and there, produce screens, but you don't really have a meaning. Yeah, I think it's really incredibly important and something one should learn if he feels or she feels that is a little bit lacking on this point. And the second point maybe is that if you understand the business side of things, and this is something unfortunately is not there, but he just told this in his talk. Martin said, I think product designers can also be product engineers or entrepreneurs. And so having this kind of arrow in your tool belt, or like in your skill set, it really can empower you to actually build something on your own. If you're just this best purely visual UI designer, you will cut yourself from a lot of possibilities. And yeah, I think that's super interesting.
Cool, thank you. Silvia, hi. You're going to have your talk tomorrow about design systems. Bit of a buzzword nowadays. Maybe you can tell, like, in a few sentences about you and your talk and what's it going to be about.
Yeah, so hey everyone, or Moin Hamburg. I'm Silvia Bormüller, I'm from Munich. I'm a freelance designer and also sketch ambassador. You know, the sketchapp.com thing where most of people I know do create their design systems. Of course, there are many other tools like Figma. So what I do in Munich is freelancing, actually planning and building design systems for and with my clients. And I do also organize a lot of meetups for Sketch and Framer, another design tool, like there are so many design tools, and giving workshops and stuff like that. And my talk tomorrow will be on design systems and best practices.
Cool. So what did you learn from all the best practices? Can they, like, when it's such a big buzzword and everybody's talking about it, and they're talking about it sometimes more of a savior thing that can make everybody happy. When you talk about best practices, you must have seen maybe also as a freelancer a lot of implementations of design systems. So what do they fulfill, and what is their, like, all the promises, where do they fall short?
Yes. So a big plus is like consistency. You finally have a possibility to like align your user experience and visual design across multiple products, touch points, platforms, whatever. So finally you can have like the one user experience or the one visual design. When I booked my flight some days ago, I've recognized that this maybe, or this is the same, like the same product, because I saw that logo, but they were like lacking to keep the design consistent. So I think this is a big plus, and also for us designers, like not doing repetitive work over and over again, designing the same elements, speeding up the workflow. But yeah, of course, it takes a lot of time to build one. You shouldn't treat it as a side project. So a design system is a never-ending work in progress. And also, I think so many people build like their design systems, or many design systems are built by designers and engineers for designers and engineers, and not for the user. And they often forget about the user and the business goals. So why do you build this? Do you even need a design system? And also there are like many guidelines. Sometimes there are no guidelines at all. Sometimes there are just too many guidelines. Like for me, Material.io, there are like so many guidelines. And in my perspective, this can also kill the creativity for designers, because there are just too many rules and too many guidelines.
So it does overcomplicate things sometimes. Would you say that, or doesn't make does a design system really take weight off your shoulders as designers and also as developers?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, how you build how you set it up. So you definitely need someone to have an overview, because it is really hard to manage this whole system and keep everything in sync across the team. So I think the hardest part is to manage people working on a design system and educate them.
Okay.
How to use it, how to build it, and also educate them on like how to use the design tools.
Mm-hmm. And one more question that came up is like when you said, okay, the team is building it, they have to maintain it, they have to. It is not a side project, like this is how you phrased it. Would you say that a design system itself, like, may create a new job, which is like roughly could be phrased as something like a design ops, so somebody that takes care of people of designers, so that designers can work, so they only care about something like a design system and all the operational stuff around design. What would you say? Is there a new job perspective for designers?
Yeah, first of all, another new buzzword, design ops, design operations. Yes, definitely. I would say you definitely need someone. It could be one person or a whole department or a team or someone who has an overview, because it is really hard to keep everything like in sync. Like you have so many components, you have so many people working on the design system. Someone just has to help with a like creating an overview and dealing with the process, because otherwise designers can't concentrate on like their job and create designs, because they have to deal with the process and guidelines, and also there are a lot of meetings. So we designers, we hate meetings. And you spend a lot of time like talking, but actually you want to build this thing, and it would be cool to have someone who helps or who has an overview.
Cool. And then last in our round here is Roy, and maybe you can introduce yourself as well and say a few words about what you're going to talk about in a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm Roy. I'm originally from the Netherlands, and I moved to Berlin early last year to start working at IXDS. It's a design studio in Berlin and Munich. And I focus on interface design there. On the side, I also work on Sketchrunner, and I see a funny parallel. I organize events. Jenny was also organizing events, so it's kind of cool to see that sort of the need to, yeah, like something you're passionate about. I know that Silvia is doing the Sketch meetup as well and the Framer meetups in Munich. It's kind of cool to see that parallel across like several designers. My talk is mostly about the broken workflow between design and development and how we can all deal with that process, basically.
Okay, and what would you say is the single most common problem in designer and developer interaction, and where is the workflow broken?
I think the workflow is broken because the two worlds of like interface design and, let's say, front-end development, those processes are very disconnected. Like you work in your tool and you create static designs, and then there's this whole gap that you didn't fill in. You're never capable of filling it in based on like the current tools that you have. And then the developer has to create sort of and come up with so many things that are sort of unsaid or undefined in this design process. And I think on the one hand, that is more of sort of understanding that that's the case and dealing with it like sort of with common sense, basically. But on the other hand, it would be nice if our tools would help us in this process.
So you want better tools?
Always.
Okay. Where would you say designers can harness more power from, like the tools that we use or the processes that we are in? Because sometimes it feels like, okay, now there's this very powerful tool called InVision, or there's this powerful tool called FrameX or something. And others would maybe argue, I mean, we have an IT management track, just to plug that. Maybe we're, as designers, could be also interested in that, where they say, like, okay, it's all about the processes, it's all about Agile, or yeah, or Scrum or whatever. Would you say it is more important to have the right tools or the right processes? Maybe it's a mixture?
It's always a mixture, I guess. But no, I think the tools are Of course, there's always like the latest, shiniest, fanciest tools coming out every week, and we all want to jump on it. And I always subscribe, just leave my email and take my data. But I think that's not necessarily solving it. Like the newest tool is not going to solve your process, basically. And if you have the best tools, you can still mess up how you develop a product. So I would say it's more in processes and it's more in actual communication, making sure that you mean the same thing and that you build the thing that you envision, and whether that's in a static tool like Sketch or whether that's in the most fanciest, newest tool that incorporates React components. I mean, I'd love to work with those tools, but on the one hand, they're not there yet, and they're also not going to magically solve everything for us. We still have to think.
Silvia, do you think that there's this one tool for design systems? Do you have an idea? It just came up.
I'm doing a lot for Sketch, so no, definitely not. There are so many tools. Like it's a mixture. So you have Sketch, then you need some plugins or another tool for your documentation and versioning. So for versioning, for example, Go Abstract. There's a new tool for documentation. Forget the name. Then you need a tool like for prototyping. You need a tool to create your micro animations and interaction stuff. There are just so many tools, and I think there's not the one tool. Just you have to learn a lot of tools. That's how it is.
But would it I was thinking does it annoy you to have more tools, or is it even a good thing to have multiple companies focusing on just very tiny parts of the whole experience in designing new things?
Yeah, there's a lot of competition and there are many tools, but in my perspective, it's better to have more options. So I said goodbye to the Adobe world like months ago. That's not an option for me, but it depends what you want to build. So when you want to build a design system, then you have your tools. When you want to prototype, you have your tools. And those people building those tools are experts, I think, on the specific topic. So for me, I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, did you have like a favorite tool that you want to plug that led you through this redesign process, or that helped you to stay focused and consistent, other than maybe it's possibly Sketch, right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely didn't have one tool. Yeah, a lot of stuff in Sketch, but a lot of just using loads of different tools. Really, I mean, InVision, Framer, obviously Zeppelin. You use that a lot. I used to be really sort of militant about trying to just use certain things, but I don't really mind anymore. I think as long as you're having all the right conversations with developers and everyone in the product process, then eventually you'll get it right. I think, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Now it's time to open up to you as listeners, as visitors. Do you have questions to this group? Do you feel something is on your mind and you always want to talk about?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of buzz about new tools on the blog, like InVision Studio and Framer X. And I was very happy once I've seen the InVision Studio demo, and was very happy to get beta access. But like it's November now and still in beta, and Framer X is the same. Are you as frustrated as me about these early betas with kind of no development after that? It feels like we're stuck in this promised perfect world where you only use one tool.
Who wants to take the question?
Design tools expert.
I understand the frustration. I'm not so much frustrated because I think, it's all marketing. I think especially with InVision, it was a lot of marketing, and everyone was like super excited about this new tool coming out, and then it took a little bit too long, and now it's already taking very long. And with Framer, it's a little bit similar. I think Framer X is really cool and it really has a lot of potential. But they should keep on delivering and keep on shipping to live up to the promise that they made. And I'm not necessarily disappointed because I can still find my way around with like the tools that I'm already using, and I keep improving my workflow anyway. But on the other hand, maybe it's also exciting because getting to know people on the team, for example, and seeing what they're working on and maybe even improving. Like Framer X is always also opening up a little bit more so people can create their own components and their own things for in the design store. So in a way, we can also help shape those tools and kind of be part of the success. InVision also has their own platform. Adobe XD announced something with a platform recently. So in a way, us as a community are also helping these products succeed or not. But I do agree that they have to take it a little bit easier with their marketing.
Thank you. More questions?
So I'd like to add that you have to think about that because there are like 30 to 50 people working on the product, not like 100 or 500. But yeah, like Roy said, it's a good way for us designers to give a lot of feedback, and hopefully or probably they will also implement all of those features we need.
Hello everyone. As a developer myself, I was tackling this issue pretty often with the interaction between the designers and the developers. So for my case, I'm having the perfect design in front of me, but when I just take a look, I know that it's not gonna work for like 100 other cases. And yeah, I know the key is communication here, but it's a repeating process. Like it's happening all the time. You're having a design that matches all the things that you need. But for example, in Czech, it's like a huge line and it's not fitting to design. In Polish, it's completely something else. And like, I was just wondering how you guys are approaching this besides of like clear communication, you know? Is there anything to solve this issue or like a process or something? Thank you.
I guess I could talk a little bit about this because we used to have more of a sort of handoff process, like we would design everything and it would all be looking great and then give it to a development team. But we're trying to sort of combat that now by just having kickoffs with developers before any designs even started. So, and just working with development just constantly, quite all the way through really. I think that definitely really helps for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in something that is kind of in my talk tomorrow, but like I feel like a lot of edge cases that come up, for example, when I work at Yelp, can be easily solved by the developer. And like I think this is starting to merge and starting to be better, and the conversation starting to be better. Before, like let's say 5 years ago, it was more like, I have nothing to do with this. Like I won't touch the designs at all. You have to give me every error states for every whatever edge case possible. But I feel like if sometime you have some string issue, the way that the designer will solve it is probably either, I don't know, like trimming the text or finding another translation, finding another string that would fit. And I feel like having all of those designs ready before, it just won't help it. You just need to fix the process rather than having everything sorted out perfectly before, because anyway, you might, as a developer, come up with some technical limitations later on that would just change everything that you spent 3 months designing anyway. So yeah, it's really this blend of design and development, and especially not really back-end, but front-end development that would need to merge more into this like conversation.
Yeah, it definitely sounds very familiar, this sort of moment that you think everything got solved already in the design phase, let's say, and that it's still missing so many sort of specification. And on the one hand, like indeed edge cases, you have to sort of decide also how many sort of like, what is the limit to solve edge cases, or could there be sort of a generic solution for it? But I don't think we can sort of solve this, but we can start becoming more aware of why this arises. And indeed, sort of one of the solutions to it is indeed like communication, better communication. But we need to make sure that we talk about the same thing and why it's not sufficient to have this sort of perfectly looking static design and then moving into development, and why there's this broken workflow, which is kind of what my talk is about. So if you have some time at 5 o'clock, I'm in the next room at Kino 7, and I will talk a bit more about all of this.
Yeah, I think that also it's kind of about accepting that there will be edge cases, especially as the product has been developed over a long period of time. There's probably things in that product that people that are working there weren't even around at the time when they were decided. So that even if you try and cover all these phases, all these things in the design phase, then the designers get frustrated because they see it and it's not actually covering all the states that they put in, because there was so many states in there that the developer missed some, and then you end up with like a kind of a big frustration between the two parties there. So I think, it's just sort of about accepting that there will be edge cases, and then I guess trying to come up with a design system that if there is a piece of text that's too long or something, then there's a system around how you deal with that, I guess. So it's not easy, is it?
Hi everyone. Thank you for the great insights so far. My question concerns design systems with regards to how to choose the right way to do one, the right scale, or also the right, let's say, place or tool, because often, it's not just within the product that the design will be used, but within communications in the company or marketing, that could also be, the design system could also be useful for that. So how do you start doing that, to start creating a design system having all that in mind?
Yeah, definitely with planning and deciding if you need a design system, if you need a style guide, if style guide is enough, if you just need a UI pattern library. So what do you need, and what is the goal? What do you want to achieve? And you said something that's really right. You have to, there are so many stakeholders, not just for designers and developers. There is research, there is UX, there is product management, so many stakeholders, and you definitely have to speak the same language. Of course, also developers. So you definitely have to put a lot of effort in meetings and planning, and you should definitely do that together. And of course, then you have to choose a tool and first educate your designers on that tools, because to make sure that you're building the components, I would say, in the right way, because otherwise it's just a mess. So you definitely have to decide what kind of tool you want to use. Sometimes when it's just a small team, maybe you just don't need a design system at all. So I have some teams where designers are sitting in the same office. So I always tell them, maybe just a style guide or a pattern library is enough for you. You don't need to build a giant system for your whatever landing page. That's just stupid, I would say.
Yeah, I also think it's important to agree on what we mean with a design system, because sort of the definition I agree with most with is that it's about how design and development are in sync, so that you have a component that is already in code, and that refers to a piece of documentation that describes how it is used, and it is in a way also designed in a tool like Sketch or something else, so that you can use it across all your different skills, basically. So, and then it's indeed the question: is that the power you really need? Do you need all of this? Because again, there's no one sort of perfect tool for you to hey, here you can just put everything in and it will work no matter what. It's very much about the process around it. And I think what often gets forgotten is that maintaining a design system is pretty much a challenge, because what was already mentioned before, like someone needs to take charge or have a vision on what patterns are already there and what patterns can be added or can be maybe be simplified, and that's a much bigger challenge, which I think is, well, maybe overkill for a lot of projects, and would be useful if you have like several products, you have a big company, and you can have a dedicated team that takes care of the design system part.
Yeah, I also always start like with a kick-off workshop to find out if you really need a design system and who needs to be involved. So maybe that helps for you as well. Like finding the right tool, you can do that in that workshop. And you also need someone, I would say, who is in love with the whole design system topic. Otherwise, this will just be a side project. So if you do not have someone in your team, then you can just, I don't know, hire someone or look for freelancers who will help you with planning and deciding and stuff like that.
Okay, that's interesting. So you would hire that person, that designer, to specifically work on the design system most of their time, or?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Something that we're trying at the moment is to have basically at the end of every week we have a kind of sync up meeting with the whole of all the design that each designer's been doing that week, and it's just an opportunity for just talk about new components as well that we can kind of commit to the design system. So that's kind of one way that we're sharing the workload at the moment. But I definitely agree we're going to have to appoint somebody that's like really sweats the details and really wants to get into that. So that's the next step.
I just want to add something on the design systems. You said this repeatedly, it's not a side project. And one thing which this question kind of implied is how far can we build it and how much things do we build out? But I think the challenge of design system is not really the building part, it's more the maintaining part, because it's growing constantly. And yeah, I think you need to put the efforts at the start, of course, and you need to define where you want to go. But I think the 99% of the work is done over time, every day or whatever. So what did you call it? Design ops? Having some kind of design operation. You need to have some kind of person that would have at least this subtitle on his title and would take care of this and would really genuinely care about this, because the main part of the work is not actually building this thing in the beginning, but really to make sure it's consistent and being updated with all the patterns that you might have to introduce for new features and stuff like this.
Okay, we're a bit running out of time, right? And I would say if we still have any questions in the crowd, everybody here is open to talk to. I mean, we have still another day and the evening and the party. If you're not feeling comfortable to talk to us, just write emails or Twitter. I think you find everybody that is on this conference also online. And otherwise, thank you very much for being here, for spending the time with us. And yeah, and thank you very much.